The Luxury Counterfeit Kingpin complete fail minus state narrative. You never planned to become the Luxury Counterfeit Kingpin. It started in the stale air of your 1-bedroom apartment in a mid-sized American city, where the walls were thin enough to hear every neighbor's argument and the constant low hum of highway traffic never quite died. The place smelled of cheap instant noodles and damp carpet, a permanent reminder of the dead minus and gigs that kept you broke and pissed off. Luxury brands? They sold status for the price of a used car. You saw the gap and decided to fill it with fakes that looked real enough to fool anyone who was carrying a loop. The first move was simple. A contact on an encrypted forum in Asia offered 20 Rolex Submariner replicas. You paid in Bitcoin routed through 3 mixers. No traces. When the plain brown box arrived, you sliced the tape with a kitchen knife. The metallic clink of the bracelets filled the room. The watches were old and heavy in your palm, carrying the sharp chemical bite of machine oil and fresh plastic. You set up a bare-bones shop, if Y store under a throwaway name, bounced your IP through a VPN chain that ended in Romania, and wrote descriptions that sounded legit with movement replica, flawless to the untrained eye. Price $250. Low enough to move, high enough to feel like a steal. The first sale notification hit your phone at 14. The chime cut through the refrigerators, droned like a blade. Your heart slammed against your ribs as you processed the crypto payment. Gloves on, label printed at the public library, package dropped at a busy post office during rush hour. No cameras caught your face. The buyer left 5 stars. The next day looks and feels authentic. Saved a fortune. You leaned back in your creaky chair, the warm rush flooding your chest. This wasn't crime. This was correction. You were in control. You kept it small and quiet. No social media. No flashy lifestyle. Handbags came next. Louis Vuitton on never full S. Gucci totes. Chanel flaps. You rented a 5-Ketson storage unit on the industrial edge of town under a fake ID. Inside, the air was cool and dry, but carried the musty bite of concrete and the sweet chemical reek of new leathering. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead while you sorted inventory at night, fingers tracing stitches, testing zippers that clicked with satisfying precision. Your back ached from lifting boxes. Your knees popped when you stood. The discomfort didn't matter. The cash stacking in your drawer, crisp hundreds that still smelled of fresh ink, made every sore muscle worth it. You stayed meticulous. Different post offices for every shipment. Prepaid labels. M is declared customs forms, fashion samples. Value $20. You studied CBP's Asia reports online, learning exactly what triggered X-race cans and day. Eye pattern matching. Your batches were too small to scatter. You rotated suppliers every quarter, used Tor for all supplier chats, and layered to -factor authentication on everything. At night, the apartment felt smaller, boxes crowding the corners, the synthetic tang of packaging tape thick in the air. You slept lighter, ears straining for any corridor that slammed too late. But it was always nothing, just the city breathing. Psychologically, it changed you fast. Mornings, you caught your reflection in the foggy bathroom mirror and saw sharper eyes, straighter shoulders. The old loser who flipped burgers was gone. You were the operator now. You analyzed every risk like a chess player. Rotate IP addresses after every 5 sales. Generate unique product descriptions with AI to dodge plagiarism filters. Never reuse drop addresses. The paranoia was there, a low itch at the base of your skull, but you reframed it as discipline. They chase cartels and terrorists. You told the empty room, voice flat. Not some guy moving fake watches out of a storage unit. The words tasted like cold satisfaction. By month 6, you had quit the gigs. The money was millions, but it was freedom. You allowed yourself small upgrades, better coffee that filled the kitchen with bitter aroma, a second phone for business only. A repeat buyer, in the same state, ordered 3 times. You split the shipments across the carriers, unchanged origins anyway. Technical safeguards held. The system was vast, slow, and blind to specs like you. You were the amateur kingpin. Low profile, invisible. You controlled the flow, the narrative, the money. The net of law enforcement existed somewhere out there, algorithms sifting data, agents sipping coffee in fluorescent offices, but it hadn't noticed you yet. You believed it never would. The city outside kept its indifferent rhythm, rain drumming on the window, sirens wailing in the distance, wet asphalt rising on the breeze when you cracked the pane. You closed it, returned to the screen, cursor blinking patiently. Control was yours. T. You scaled up because the money whispered that you could. Same apartment, same storage unit. But now the shelves groaned under 200 units a month. Rolex, Omega, Louis Vuitton, Chanel. The air inside the unit had thickened with the sweet minus plastic reek of fresh counterfeits and the faint metallic bite of the cheap padlock. You replaced every 30 days. You still wore gloves, still used the public library printer at odd hours, still routed every Bitcoin payment through fresh mixers and a new VPN endpoint in Estonia. You told yourself the increase was disciplined, smart, invisible. The first warning arrived in your inbox at 3:47. A single minus line alert from the shop if Y back end package for 1,780 to held by carrier for inspection. Your stomach tightened like a wet rope. You checked the tracking. Louisville, Kentucky. Routine customs flag. The message said. You rerouted the next 12 shipments through different hubs, changed the declared value to $19 again, and switched courier. Nothing to worry about. Amateurs panic. You were the professional now, but the patterns were affirming anyway. 3 more holds in the Midwest over the next 10 days. Same weight range, same barcode prefix, same faint chemical signature. The X-Ray machines were learning to recognize. You didn't know it yet, but a regional task force in the Great Lakes area had started logging high-volume fashion counterfeits in their weekly briefing. The agents were X-anarchs who hated white-collar cases until the numbers started adding up. Your name washed on any file. Just a ghost seller, ID and a trail of prepaid labels that all smelled the same to the algorithms. You felt the first relitch of paranoia in your shoulders while packing at Tua. The fluorescent bulb above the storage unit hummed louder than usual, or maybe your ears were ringing from the adrenaline. Sweat cooled on your lower back, sticking the cheap cotton shirt to your skin. The smell of your own fear, mixed with the fake leather and cut through the stale concrete air like a warning you refused to read. You told yourself it was just the coffee. You upgraded your tour setup anyway, added a new layer of obfuscation on the supplier chats, and started splitting every order across 3 different fulfillment addresses. You paid cash for under 3 different fake IDs. The money kept coming. A buyer in Chicago ordered 10 pieces in one go and left a review that made you pause. Quality matches the real thing. Fast shipping. You smiled in the dark, the blue glow of the laptop painting your face ghostly. Control. You still had it. Regional cops were chasing street-level fakes and pill presses, not your clean little operation. You even allowed yourself a small celebration steak dinner paid in cash at a chain restaurant where the waitress never looked twice. The sear on the meat filled your nose with smoke and iron while you scrolled the dark web forums. No one was talking about you. Good. Then the first buyer complaint hit. Watch stopped after 2 weeks. Looks fake under magnification. Your jaw clenched so hard you heard the click. You refunded immediately, messaged the guy with a polished apology, and blacklisted his IP. But the damage was done. That complaint got forwarded to a consumer protection database. The database talked to Customs and Border Protection. CBP's new AI pattern matcher trained on millions of intercepted parcels flagged your shipping profile as consistent with mid-tier counterfeit luxury distribution. Not enough for a warrant, just enough for a regional alert. You started sleeping with one eye open. Every car that slowed on your street made your pulse spike. The apartment smelled different now, sour from the takeout containers you no longer bothered to throw away in the faint ozone tang of the always minus on laptop fans. Your reflection in the bathroom mirror showed darker circles, sharper cheekbones. The old dead and loser was completely gone. In his place sat a man who understood risk like a second language. You analyzed every new variable, rotate post offices again, change packaging, tape brand, embed random noise in the product photos to dodge reverse image search. The net was still loose, you told yourself. Regional only. No federal heat. You were still the ghost. By the end of month 9, the task force had your shipping pattern on a whiteboard to states away. They didn't have your face. They didn't have your real name. But they had the shape of you, small, careful, growing. The news hadn't tightened yet. It was only measuring your neck for future reference. You closed the laptop, listened to the city breathe outside the thin walls, distant sirens, wet tires on asphalt, the low endless growl of trucks that never stopped. You were still ahead. Still the luxury counterfeit kingpin in the making. The system was watching, but it hadn't blinked at you specifically. You told yourself the regional noise was manageable. Then the seizure happened. A pallet of 200 pieces watches, bags, belts vanished into a Homeland Security warehouse in Chicago. The tracking number simply went dead. No held for inspection. No polite email. Just silence. You sat in the storage unit at for 12. The concrete floor cold through your jeans. The air thick with a sour reek of your own sweating. The sweet mind a chemical ghost of fresh counterfeits. Your pulse hammered in your ears louder than the distant freight trains. You refreshed the page 20-3 times. Nothing. The system had finally looked up from its coffee and noticed the shape of your operation. You didn't panic. You escalated. New supplier in Guangdong. Fresh crypto wallets layered through 2 new mixers and a privacy coin bridge. You rented 2 more storage units under different fake LLCs. Paid 6 months cash up front. The real estate guy never met your eyes. You changed every shipping route. Routed packages through 3 separate fulfillment centers in different time zones. And embedded metadata scrubbers in every product photo. Technical overkill, you called it. Professionalism. The luxury counterfeit kingpin was going to fold because some mid-minus level customs drone got lucky. But the net was already tightening around your throat. The FBI's intellectual property rights unit picked up the file 2 weeks later. Luxury brands had filed formal complaints. Rolex, LVMH, Richemont pushing the case from regional nuisance to federal priority. Your pattern matched their new AI threat model, consistent volume, clean crypto trails, packaging that fooled even trained inspectors until the serial numbers started failing under UV light. They assigned a case agent named Ramirez, who kept a whiteboard in a windowless J. Edgar Hoover and X. Your ghost seller ID now had a red pin on it. You didn't know that yet. You only felt the change in the air. Sleep became a negotiation. You lay on the sagging mattress in your apartment, the low buzz of the refrigerator mixing with the wet hiss of tires on rain-slick streets outside. Every corridor slam made your stomach clench. The smell of old takeout and unwashed clothes hung heavy, a sour reminder that the freedom you bought was starting to cost more than money. You upgraded your VPN to a military-grade chain, ran every communication through a fresh virtual machine wiped after each session, and started using voice distortion software on the rare supplier calls. You were still ahead, still the smartest guy in the room. Then the first buyer got raided. A hedge-fund guy in Manhattan who ordered 14 pieces in 1 month had his apartment turned over by federal agents at dawn. The news hit the dark forums like a gunshot. You read the thread at 3:57. The blue screen light carving harsh shadows across your face. The buyer had bragged on a private Telegram channel. 1 loose thread. 1 photo with a visible serial. The agents traced the wallet address you thought was buried. They didn't have your face yet, but they had your financial silhouette clean, careful growing. The net measured another inch. Your hand shook slightly when you packed the next batch. The knit-row gloves stuck to damp palms. The metallic click of zipped eyes sounded too loud in the silent unit. You told yourself it was caffeine. You told yourself the escalation proved you were winning bigger volume, better encryption, smarter routing. The psychological shift was subtle, but vicious. Every small victory now carried the metallic taste of fear. You analyzed the raid reports like scripture, reverse engineering exactly how the buyer slipped. You swore you would never make that mistake. Control. You still had it. The federal machine was slow, bureaucratic, underfunded for counterfeits when cartels moved fentanyl. You were a footnote. By month 14, the case had a formal title: Operation Gilded Thread. Ramirez's team coordinated with your Poland Chinese authorities on the supply side. Your new supplier started missing shipments. You switched again, paid premium for silence. The apartment smelled of burnt coffee and the faint ozone of overworked laptop, fans running 24/7s. Your reflection showed hollow cheeks and eyes that no longer trusted the dark. The city outside kept its indifferent rhythm sirens closer now, or maybe you just heard them better. You escalated one last time. A big drop, 400 units to a single high-net-worth network in California. Split across 7 carriers, 7 fake origins, 7 layers of obfuscation. The money would set you up for 6 months of silence. You sat back, cracked a beer that tasted like rest and victory, and allowed yourself one moment of cold satisfaction. They were chasing ghosts. You were the ghost that kept evolving. The federal net had your scent now. It wasn't a regional annoyance anymore. It was a priority case with resources, algorithms, and patience. You still believed you were faster. You were wrong. The noose had already slipped over your head. It was only waiting for you to stop squirming long enough to pull tight. The identification came on a Tuesday that smelled like burnt wiring and cheap disinfectant. You were in the storage unit at 119 M. Gloved hands taping the last of a 2-100- piece drop when the burner phone buzzed once. ADARC- web from alert. Operation Gilded Thread just linked a wallet cluster. Your stomach dropped 6 inches. You told yourself it was noise. Another false positive. You had rotated wallets again last week, layered to 3 fresh privacy coins and a new mixer no one had cracked yet. The net cow didn't see you. You were still the ghost. But the ghost had left a fingerprint. Agent Ramirez's team had finally connected the dots. A single buyer in Miami who paid with a traceable exchange account after bragging on Instagram stories. One blurred photo of a Rolex on his wrist. One careless geolocation tag. The FBI's financial minus crimes algorithm chewed the data overnight and spat out your entire financial silhouette clean, careful, evolving. The same pattern that had been growing for 18 months. By dawn, they had your real name. By noon, they had the storage minus Unitel LCS. By 3 p.m., a federal judge in the Northern District of Illinois signed the first sealed warrant. You felt nothing at first. Just the low electric hum of the fluorescent tubes and the cold concrete bleeding through your sneakers. Then the itch started behind your left eye. You packed the last box slower than usual, fingers suddenly clumsy on the zipped eyes. The synthetic leather smell turned cloying, almost nauseating. You wiped the unit down anyway, every surface, every handle, because discipline was still your religion. You drove the long way home, eyes flicking to the rear view every 4 seconds. No tails, no helicopters, just the wet slap of tires on rain-slick pavement and the metallic taste of adrenaline coating your tongue. That night the apartment felt smaller. The refrigerator's compressor kicked on like a warning shot. You sat in the dark, laptop screen painting your face corpse-blue, refreshing every tracker you owned. Nothing. No knock. No black SU verses. You almost laughed. The system was still lumbering. Still bureaucratic. You upgraded everything again, new virtual machines. New VPN endpoints in Iceland. New encrypted VoIP for the one remaining supplier who hadn't ghosted you. The Luxury Counterfeit Kingpin was adapting faster than they could file paperwork. You believed it right up until the moment your main shop, if Y domain, went dark. The takedown notice hit at 447. This store has been seized by the United States Department of Justice. Your chest tightened so hard you heard the ribs creak. You stared at the screen until the letters blurred. They had the domain registrar logs. They had the hosting provider's subpoena data. They had your face, now grainy CCD from the public library printer you used 6 months ago, enhanced by the new facial minus recognitions software CBP shared with the FBI. The manhunt had a name. It had a budget. It had your photo on every agent's tablet. You moved at sunrise. Cash only. 1 duffel bag. The storage units were already burned in your mind. You never went back. You drove 3 states over in a used Civic bot with folded hundreds from a Craigslist ad. Windows down so the cold morning air could slap the panic off your face. The highway smelled of diesel and wet pine. Your hands shook on the wheel at every rest stop. You told yourself this was temporary. Tactical retreat. The Kingpin doesn't die, he evolves. But the net was no longer loose. It had your scent, your name, your face. Local PD received the BOL by lunch. Ramirez coordinated with Homeland Security's HSI Division for border alerts. Your old apartment was already wired cameras on the hallway, microphones in the vents you never noticed. They were listening to the silence you left behind. You checked into a motel outside Indianapolis under a fresh fake ID that still smelled of fresh laminate. The room reeked of cigarette ghosts and industrial carpet cleaner. You sat on the edge of the sagging bed, phone in one hand, pistol you bought off a street guy in the other. The weight felt alien. The paranoia had teeth now. Every footstep in the hallway made your pulse spike. Every corridor outside sounded like the beginning of the end. You still thought you could outrun it. New supplier contacts. New crypto paths. New cities. You were the smart one. The system was slow, clumsy. You repeated it like a mantra, while the cheap lamp buzzed above you and your own sweat cooled on your back. The manhunt was live. Helicopters hadn't started yet, but the algorithms already owned your shadow. You were no longer the invisible kingpin. You were the target, and the noose had just begun to tighten for real. You're running now, not moving, not hiding, running. The Civic died outside street. Lewis, so you ditched it in a cornfield and stole a rusted pickup with a screwdriver and 2 minutes of pure animal panic. The engine knocked like a dying heart while you drove east through the night, windows down, cold October air slicing your face raw. Every headlight in the rear view felt like a spotlight. Your hands trembled on the wheel, knuckles white, palms slick with the sour reek of 3-day fear minus, what that no gas minus station soap could touch. The money was almost gone. 3 crumpled thousands in your pocket. The rest burned on burner phones and fake IDs that expired faster than you could use them. You slept in the truck bed under a tarp that smelled of mildew and diesel, body curled fetal against the cold metal. Waking up at 3 a.m. 2 distant sirens made your bladder clench so hard it hurt. You pissed on the side of a deserted to- lane and kept driving because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant the net was already around your throat. They had your face on every state trooper's tablet now. Ramirez's team fed the BOLO to facial minus recognition cameras at every major interstate exit, every Walmart, every Greyhound station. You grew a beard that itched like fire, shaved your head with a disposable razor in a McDonald's bathroom that stank of bleach and shit. The mirror showed a gaunt stranger with hollow eyes and cracked lips. The luxury counterfeit kingpin looked like a junkie now. You laughed once, short and duggly, the sound swallowed by the hand-dryer's roar. You tried one last technical play. A new laptop bought cash in a pawn shop, routed through public W, I-via truck stops. A single desperate message to the last supplier who hadn't flipped. No answer. The silence was louder than any raid. Your crypto wallets were frozen by exchanges that suddenly cared about KYC. The system wasn't chasing anymore. It was waiting for you to make the mistake you couldn't afford. Despair arrived in a Motel 6 outside Pittsburgh. The room smelled of old cigarettes and industrial carpets soaked in decades of other fugitives' panic. You sat on the edge of the mattress, pistol heavy in your lap, listening to the ice machine clunk down the hall like a countdown. Your body ached, lower back seized from sleeping in the truck, knees swollen from constant crouching. Stomach had eaten out that rejected the greasy burgers you forced down. The metallic taste of adrenaline never left your tongue. You still believed, for 30 seconds at a time, that you could slip the noose, cross into Canada, start over under a new name, sell fakes in some tourist trap where no one asked questions. Then, the helicopter passed low at dawn. The rotor thump vibrated through the thin walls and straight into your ribs. You froze, gun raised at nothing, sweat pouring down your spine. It wasn't for you, not yet. But the sound told you the manhunt had gone airborne. Drones, license minus plate readers, Cell minus star pings every piece of the federal machine you once outsmarted was now tuned to your frequency. You moved again. Bus to Cleveland. Another stolen car. Another motel that smelled exactly like the last one. Your reflection in the bathroom mirror looked older each time. The psychological fracture was clean and merciless. The man who once controlled shipments like a chess master now counted quarters for vending minus machine coffee. The old arrogance skirtled into self minus loafing that tasted like bile. You had been so sure, so fucking clever. The net had simply waited, patient as gravity, while you built the exact profile they needed to own you. Close call in Buffalo. You were buying burner minutes when the cashier's eyes lingered half a second too long. You left without the phone, heart slamming, and ran 3 blocks through freezing rain that soaked your hoodie and turned the fake leather of your last remaining watch black. The cold bit into your bones. Your lungs burned. You hid behind a dumpster that reeked of rotting fish and let the rain wash the tears you refused to name. By week for you were in Maine. Ocean air sharp with salt and decay. Sleeping in the woods because motels felt like traps now. The pistol felt heavier every night. Food was whatever you could steal from gas stations, beef jerky that tasted like cardboard and regret. Your body was breaking down, constant diarrhea from stress and bad food. Hands shaking so bad Leah could barely text on the last burner. The kingpin was a skeleton wearing stolen clothes. You still checked the dark web when you found Signal, hoping for some miracle thread that said the heat had moved on. Nothing. Only the growing certainty that every road lead to the same steel door. The net had you now, not loose anymore. Snug, warm, almost gentle. You could feel it breathing on the back of your neck, while the Atlantic wind howled through the pines and your own pulse counted down the seconds you had left. You were the luxury counterfeit kingpin once. Now you were just meat that hadn't been caught yet. They took you out for Seventina. In a rented cabin outside Bangor, Maine. The door exploded inward with a sound like the world cracking. Flashbang light bleached your retinas white. Boots thundered across pine floors that still smelled of cheap disinfectant and your own 3- weak fear minus sweat. You were on your knees before your brain caught up. Cold steel cuffs biting wrists already raw from the drive. The air tasted of gun oil, wet wool, and the sharp metallic tang of your own blood where you bit your tongue. Agent Ramirez stood over you, breath steady, voice flat. Luxury counterfeit kingpin. Game over. You almost laughed. The net had finally closed exactly the way you always swore it never would. The ride to the federal holding facility was silent, except for the wet hiss of tires on black topping, the low hum of the cruiser's radio spitting your name like a verdict. Processing smelled of industrial cleaner and stale vomit. They stripped you, photographed every scar, took the last fake watch you still wore like a talisman. The orange jumpsuit hung loose on the body that had once moved shipments like a god. In the cell, the concrete sucked heat from your bare feet. You sat on the steel bunk, listening to the distant clank of doors and the slow drip of a faucet that never stopped. The illusion of control dissolved in the fluorescent buzz. You had built the perfect cage, one Bitcoin at a time. Trial came 6 months later in a windowless courtroom that smelled of lemon polish and old paper. The evidence was merciless server logs, wallet trails, CCTV stills enhanced by AI. I know your face was unmistakable. Ramirez testified without emotion. The luxury brands sent lawyers in suits that cost more than your entire operation ever cleared. You sat in the defendant's chair, hands folded, feeling the eyes of the jury peel you open layer by layer. Your lawyer whispered numbers 12 to 15 years if you pled. You pled. The judge's gavel sounded like a coffin lid. 15 years federal, no parole. The luxury counterfeit kingpin became inmate 47,821.58. Prison was the real teacher. USB, Lewisburg swallowed you whole. Concrete corridors echoed with shouts and slamming gates. The air carried permanent notes of bleach, sweat, and overcooked cabbage. Mornings began at 5:30 with the clatter of trays and the low electric threat of violence that never quite erupted around you. You worked the laundry detail, folding endless sheets that smelled of other men's despair. Nights you lay on the thin mattress listening to the endless coughs and whispers, feeling your body age in real time, knees stiffening, back curving, hair thinning to gray stubble. The kingpin who once commanded encrypted empires now fought for extra toilet paper. Visitors never came. The money was gone. The dark-web forums forgot your name in a week. Years stacked like bricks. 10 years and you stopped counting days and started counting heartbeats that felt slower each season. The system had won so completely, it no longer needed to glow. You watched younger inmates cycle through with the same arrogant certainty you once carried. You said nothing. The mirror in the bathroom showed a stranger with hollow cheeks and eyes that had learned the true weight of every choice. The psychological fracture healed into something colder, acceptance sharpened to a razor. You had never been the smartest man in the room. You had simply been the slowest to realize the room was a trap. Release came on a wet Tuesday in 2047. 20- to years served. The gate clanged, shut behind you in the outside. Air hit like a slap diesel rain, and the faint chemical sweetness of a world that had moved on without you. You were 50-8 broke and legally barred from anything resembling commerce. The bus ride to the halfway house smelled of wet vinyl and strangers' cheap cologne. Your reflection in the window showed a man no one would ever call kingpin again. The city outside the glass was faster, louder, encrypted in ways you no longer understood. Luxury brands sold the same fakes online now, only the algorithms were better and the penalties higher. Nothing had changed except you. You took a minimum-wage job sweeping warehouse floors at night. The broom handle felt foreign in hands that once counted hundreds in the dark. At the end of each shift you sat on a plastic chair outside the shelter, listening to the distant highway, roar and smelling what asphalt tries on the breeze. The net had never hurried. It simply waited while you built every strand yourself. The luxury counterfeit kingpin died quietly between the clank of a prison gate and the slow shuffle of an old man's feet on concrete. All that remained was the lesson you finally learned to let the system doesn't chase legends. It simply outlasts them.